Everyone, I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today, I wanted to get on and talk about, I hear this a lot in groups that I'm in, and I've had lots of clients say this, like they've already moved on, and here I am, still trying to pick up the pieces of myself, and how is that possible, right? And it's like, well, because they weren't invested as much in the relationship as you were, clearly. And that's why you're no longer together. It was a toxic relationship. That's why you're no longer together. And so, consciously we can know this and we can be like, and we're better off to not have them in our lives, and oh, I feel kind of bad for the other person or whatever. Like, we can think these thoughts consciously, but subconsciously, that wounded inner child, that part of us that feels unlovable, it's like it's confirmation of that, right? So they're able to just replace us like that, right? But really, when you think about it, um, why? Like, why does that bother you? That should be the question you're asking yourself, not, how is it possible that they're able to move on? They're able to move on because they weren't all in, right? They already had one foot out the relationship, maybe the entire time, or maybe just when things went really sour. But regardless, they weren't in it as, to, they didn't have as much to lose because they didn't put as much in, right? Or, depending on your attachment style, maybe this is you feeling it more because of your attachment style. And that's something that maybe you need to look into, right? So, the question isn't or shouldn't be, why are they able to move on so quickly? Because really, like, when someone moves from one relationship to the other so quickly that they don't even take a beat, you, I personally think that that shows a lack of maturity, right? This isn't a serious person. They don't take time to do any kind of introspection from, what did I learn about myself from that last relationship? Whether you're the one who ends it or the other person ends it, there's there is benefit to just stopping for a minute and just doing some assessment, like, what could I have done better in the relationship? What did I miss? Maybe we weren't compatible right from the beginning, but I somehow missed that. Or, like, there's lots of questions that we could take some time and ask ourselves before diving in to the next relationship, because that's how we make sure that, one relationship doesn't just become the same as the next and the next and the next, right? So when someone says to me, they jumped from one relationship into another, then I have to question whether they've done any kind of work, right? And, maybe they were doing the work throughout the relationship. Maybe they were seeing a therapist. Maybe by the time the relationship ended, they already had a lot of clarity and had done some introspection. And so by the time they ended the relationship, they were ready to move on to something that was going to be more healthy for them. Maybe that's possible. Um, because a lot of times, and I've talked about this before, most people don't regret the fact that they left the relationship. They often regret how long they stayed in it. And sometimes we don't have a choice in how long we stay in it, right? So, I've talked to a lot of people who just for financial reasons can't leave the relationship and they're stuck in it. Or they feel stuck for other reasons, right? So, but that doesn't mean we can't still do some work on our emotional and mental health, so that maybe by the time you can figure out the financial stuff and you have figured out a way to, make that split as amicably as possible, if that is possible. And maybe you've figured out the logistics of it. And if you've been doing that work through therapy and introspection and, that self-care, then maybe by the time you do reach the actual, complete end of the relationship, you are in a place where you're ready to embark on new adventures. But that still doesn't mean you can just jump over that step, right? You got to do that step. You got to do that step for personal growth, for, just for yourself, so that getting into the next relationship what you're all about, and what you're needing and wanting, and what you're looking for in a partner, and being able to like suss out whether that partner, or whether that person can actually provide those things for you, right? So that's what that work allows you to do. So there's no magic pill. There's no, wave of the wand. We have to do that work at some point in our lives, right? We have to reckon with that. We have to figure out what baggage we're still dragging along behind us before we drag it into another relationship. So, so the question isn't, or shouldn't be, how are they able to move on? The question should be, what do I need in order to be able to move on? What steps would I need to take in order to be able to move on in a healthy way, right? Not just, how can I just, shut off my brain and go out and get back in the dating scene? That's not how, that's not a healthy way to do it, okay? And I'm not talking about, dipping your toe back into the waters of dating and maybe having some fun, and maybe having some experiences that are just, very casual and fun. That's different, right? So, and I still feel like you need to be, a certain point in your healing journey to even be able to engage in those kinds of relationships. So whether you're looking for something casual, or whether you're looking for something serious, whether that includes monogamy or not, but regardless of what types of relationships you're looking for, you're going to have to do some of that healing in order to be able to navigate those situations safely and in a healthy way that's going to be right for you. So so I want to be clear that I'm not suggesting that you have to stay celibate while you're doing some of the work. I actually was listening to a really great podcast the other day, where one of the person being interviewed said that when they became single after their last relationship, they had decided for themselves, because they saw themselves sort of getting caught in these patterns of behavior where they would want to engage in just some fun and some casual relationships, and some maybe no strings or less strings attached relationships. And they had people in their lives that they could do this with in a very safe way. But what ended up happening a lot of times is that they were becoming emotionally involved, and they were getting hurt because they couldn't stay detached. And what they concluded for themselves, mind you, this is just for them, that what they kind of recognized is that when they engaged in penetrative sex with a partner, that it became more for them. So it became deeper, the connection was deeper, or there was an emotional connection there that didn't necessarily happen when that was taken out of the equation. So when they experienced their last breakup, they actually decided that for at least a year, that regardless of what kinds of interactions that they had with other people, and they were still going to, date and be open to meeting other people and having intimate relationships, but they were just going to take this one thing off the table, the penetrative sex. And so they still engaged in some erotic play and sensual play with other partners. And they were able to do that and have fun. They were very open with the people that they were engaging with. And so, there was there's lots of things you can do, right? Even if you take that off the table. So, but they found that just for them, there was something about that act that was maybe more intimate, or, created some feelings within them that weren't necessarily about that other person, right? So, maybe think about, how do you want to be in relationships? If you're thinking about putting yourself back out there and opening yourself up to relationships, what would that look like? What needs do you have right now? that you think would be met by, being out and dating. And, what are your boundaries? What are your needs and wants? And, have you done some introspection? Have you done some of the work? And are you looking for someone else who's done that kind of work as well? Because that's important. So, yeah, I hope this helps. And know that however long it takes for you to feel comfortable and to feel like you can put yourself back out into the dating world with confidence and with really great boundaries, then yeah, I mean, it's going to be different. It's different for every person, right? So don't beat yourself up for however long it's taking you, but also recognize that, there's certain, it's almost like the grieving process, right? There's certain stages that we want to sort of be moving through or engaging with so that, it's not always linear, right? But we should be at least engaging with some of the things that I've talked about as far as like, how do we heal from a toxic relationship? And I've mentioned these before. It's like, you gotta take care of yourself. So you gotta do some self-care. That's mind, body, spirit, right? So looking after your health, looking after your spirituality, doing that introspective work, whether that's on your own or through therapy, getting out there and rediscovering your passions, maybe working with mantras and working with mantras and maybe working with some mindfulness and meditation as well, right? Things like that. So doing all of these things, and you might be doing a little bit of each thing. You might be doing, you might be focusing on one thing right now, because maybe there's a part of you that suffered more or was just more negatively impacted because of the stress of being in a toxic relationship, right? So maybe your physical health took a real hit, and so you're choosing to focus on your diet and your exercise to try to get back to that physical health that you need to be, you need the strength, right? And you need the resilience physically, and you need ways of managing stress, and you need ways of sort of coping with, all of the feelings that you're feeling. So understanding that it's not a linear thing and there's not a time limit, but if you're just sitting at home thinking about how much you miss them and how upsetting it is that they've moved on, and you're still there, day after day, month after month, whatever, at some point you need to decide whether this is how long are you going to stay in this particular state. And I'm not saying that it's like an instantaneous, like once you decide that I'm done with feeling this way, that it instantly goes away, but I'm done with feeling this way. How do I change this, right? And that maybe will hopefully have you reaching out to different resources and rebuilding your community and your connections, because when you think about it, who else benefits from you doing that work, right? Not just you, because there's usually other people in your life who benefit from you being the healthiest version of you can be, whether that's your children, or maybe that's your friends and family, and most of all, of course, you. So you benefit the most from looking after yourself, doing the work and taking care of yourself. But then who else would benefit is another question you can ask yourself. Okay? So I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining me. Namaste.